Israel has continued its bombardment of Lebanon as it targets Hezbollah militants after a day of mourning marking 1 year since the October 7 Hamas terror attacks. The ABC's Global Affairs editor John Lyons is in Beirut and our Middle East correspondent Alison Horn in Jerusalem. Good morning both. John, starting with you, what's the latest on the ground where you are?
Well, Michael, it's been another heavy day of Israeli bombing, this time in the south of Lebanon. The night before, it was very heavy bombing here in Beirut, where I am. There were some 30 or so bombs dropped on Dahir, which is in the southern suburbs, not too far behind me here. But last night, it wasn't so much in Dahir here in Beirut, but it was today it's been in the southern parts of Lebanon, around the district of Tyre. Some 30 targets were hit, and the Israeli army has warned a lot of the people in the various villages and towns there to evacuate and to move north in anticipation, perhaps, that these attacks are going to escalate. And so, you know, things are pretty tense here, and there's been a lot of bombing. There's about 1.2 million Lebanese now have been displaced. I've just been today down along the foreshore here, the Corniche in Beirut, and there's a lot of people there, families who are living in tents, who've moved out of the areas that are under attack and hope that by going down to the waterfront they may have safety.
So where will things go from here? As we know, we're yet to see, aren't we, the substantive response from Israel to those Iranian missile strikes.
That's right, Michael. There's a big anticipation here in Beirut and across the Arab world that there is a response imminent from Israel to Iran, and that in turn, of course, Iran then might respond to that and might even urge Hezbollah to fire a lot of the missiles it has in southern Lebanon, a lot more of them, to fire them into Israel. So things are pretty grim here, and there's a fear that it may even get worse.
John Lyons, thank you. Let's go to you, Ali. What's the mood like across Israel on that 1 year anniversary of October 7?
Good morning, Michael. It's been an incredibly sombre and emotional day across Israel. It wasn't declared a day of mourning, but I can tell you from being on the streets, things were very quiet today. A lot of shops shut. The roads are very empty, and across the country there have been numerous ceremonies and commemorative services held to remember this day and what happened 1 year ago. A number of these ceremonies had to be scaled back in both size and the planned events because Israel has recently imposed new security restrictions, particularly around the numbers of people who can gather together in areas like Tel Aviv. So a lot of events were a lot smaller than they had planned to be. For example, the biggest event, which was meant to be a commemorative service hosted by the families of those 100 hostages still being held in Gaza, 40,000 people had registered for tickets to that event in just 24 hours, but there were no audiences really there tonight. Instead, that service was streamed into TVs and to lounge rooms across the country instead. And the reason for those security restrictions is because Israel feared that there would be attacks today, and in some respects that has rung true. We have seen today across Israel, Hamas in Gaza has fired long-range rockets towards Tel Aviv. The first time in many months that Hamas has fired such a barrage and with such intensity, I guess, in a symbolic show. Hamas saying that after a year of Israeli attacks within Gaza, that it still has some firepower and it is still willing to fight. There's also been an incredible amount of anger on the streets today as well, including at some of these ceremonies. Hostage families have been hopping up, expressing their frustrations at the Prime Minister, Benjamin Netanyahu, and his government for the failures that they say are continuing around negotiations for a ceasefire and hostage release deal. But all above, I would say that people are feeling incredibly emotional and reflective today. I've been at a ceremony in Jerusalem in the last few hours. Here's what a few people I spoke with had to say.
I felt like we've been in mourning for a year now, but today it's so intensified. And yeah, I feel like I needed to be in a place with community, like people surrounding me and I don't know, feel sad together as a community and maybe try to strengthen each other.
Personally, I'm a teacher, so few of my graduates were killed during the October 7th and the war that we're still in.
And meanwhile, Ali, Israel seems to be intensifying its attacks inside Gaza again. What do we know about that?
Yeah, so 1 year on from the bombing, the aerial campaign starting in the northern parts of Gaza. It is the north that the IDF is again targeting, telling tens of thousands of people in the north to evacuate to the south. The IDF claiming that it has intelligence Hamas has regrouped there. What's interesting, Michael, is that it was at the beginning of this year, nearly about 10 months ago, that Benjamin Netanyahu said over and over again in public interviews that victory was within reach in Gaza. 10 months on, it's clear that that statement wasn't true, because not only are we seeing the fighting intensifying in Gaza, but it's now expanding across other regions to Lebanon, and Israel fighting from fronts in Yemen and Syria and Iraq, and now this possibility of an escalation in tensions with Iran. A lot of people that I have been speaking with on both the Israeli side and the Gaza side of the border over the last couple of days have said that their one wish is for this war to end, but they feel they're starting the second year of this war no closer to a diplomatic solution.